Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Screenfish Radio. I am so glad you could join us today because we are talking about a wild film. We are talking about The Substance. And I am so thrilled to have returning faces and new faces today. I guess that's plural. I guess there's just one of each of you. But
You just call us two-faced?
I did not intentionally. Um, I would like to welcome back Catherine Erskine and for the first time, Laura Steen from a publicist from Route 504. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I'm really excited to do this.
Always good to be back.
Directed by Coralie Fargeat, The Substance tells the story of Elisabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore, a former Hollywood icon who finds herself past her prime. Despite her still stunning beauty, Elisabeth is abruptly fired from her fitness TV show due to her age. However, her life changes when she's invited to take the substance, a mysterious drug that seems to have the answer to her problems. After one simple injection, the substance promises to help her birth a version of herself that's younger, gorgeous, and essentially a better version of herself. When Elisabeth creates Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, the two must coexist by alternating 1 week at a time in order to live in balance. But as things begin to spiral, the women find themselves torn between respecting the process and fighting for themselves. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers, and there's going to be some spoilers for this one. I need to hear your reactions to The Substance, which is a very normal and just completely family-friendly film from the get-go. I'd love to hear what you think, though.
To be clear, I did not work on this film in any capacity. I'm just a fan. But yeah, I mean, like it's so delightfully unhinged that I can confidently say the last 30 minutes of this film, like I can't remember a film that I've seen that I was that surprised by in terms of what unfolds in the third act of this film. I was a really, really big fan of Coralie's first film, Revenge. So I was really excited to see this film. And I really regret not seeing this at Midnight Madness because I think that seeing this film with a crowd of genre fans would have been such an incredible experience, particularly the last third. But I think it's just such a great use of body horror to kind of take a look at the unrealistic beauty standards that we have for women, what we impose on ourselves, how that pits us against one another, how we internalize all of that. From the visuals to the soundtrack, everything is just so well done in the film. And I think it's anchored by such an unbelievable performance by Demi Moore. I would love to see her be nominated for things, but horror always, always, always is forgotten about or not recognized. So I did see that they've submitted it for musical or comedy for the Golden Globes, which is delightful. So hopefully she gets some recognition. Margaret is great in it as well, but I think the standout for sure is Demi Moore. Yeah, I just thought it was fantastic. It's a fun ride.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about the Globes because it is still funny to me that like this whole musical or comedy thing is so bizarre.
Mhm.
But if it gets Demi noticed for this,
Mhm.
I
Well, you
don't
could
care. Put
also
it in animated for all I care. I don't care. Put it.
you could also argue this movie is very darkly humorous to a certain extent. So I get it. I get it.
I want to see the musical. That's what
Right.
I.
I do enjoy a good musical.
But did you enjoy this? You can say no.
Okay, I feel like Laura spoke so well about it. My biggest problem with the movie was the last 30 minutes. I was like, why do they just keep going? Like, it's not marketed as a comedy.
Hmm.
It's a sci-fi horror movie, which, and I will say, body horror, torture horror is not my like go-to genre. And I'm always suspicious when I hear things like this was the worst. People were throwing up in the theater and like they had to leave and walk out. And I'm like, okay, if you walked out, that's fine. But I don't think anyone's throwing up in the theater over this movie. If you did, that's no shame on you. But um it was really interesting because I really, again, I had watched the trailer once. And I haven't seen Demi Moore in anything since, like, I'm not going to age myself. So, since a while. And I got really obsessed to figure out what the name of the show was, and it was called Sparkle Your Life.
Yes, yes,
That
yes.
was the morning show. I thought artistically the movie was really well done, like just from the coloring and the art part of it to all of the different all of the different outfits that they were wearing. It was great. And I found it very kind of like sci-fi in the fact that, how can I say this? I'm like, as a person who has dealt with her own body image issues very much so growing up and stuff, I was still thinking like, would I go down a dark alley and go crawl under a door into a room to do this? I'm like, people do, and it's a really good take on how far people will actually go, whether that's for cosmetic surgery, finding backdoor Ozempic for weight loss, like putting yourself at risk physically, mentally, and bodily. I guess that's physically, but like, and like, having someone birth out your back is probably what people will do. But for me, I had to cover the grossest part of this movie. I'm sorry, I'm ADHD, so I'm going to bounce around. Was watching Harvey eat those shrimp and talking in that close up of his mouth. I was like, I will take all of the things that are happening to Demi Moore and watch them. But if I have to watch that man eat that shrimp, it's gonna be the end of me. And I just really liked how gross his character was, in the sense that he's looking for this beautiful, young, talented person, and he's just the epitome of like disgust and like that just horrible old man looking for the young next young thing. I thought Demi Moore was amazing. I thought oh, what is her name? The other actor.
Margaret
Margaret was
Qualley.
amazing. They both did really well. It started out just as you would assume, right? Just an innocent trying it out, figuring it out, what's going to happen. And the reason why, and then there is all of the gross stuff that happens, which I actually thought was so well done as well, until the last 30 minutes. And I'll tell you why. I think they did a really good job at like having this kind of spiral and making sure that they remembered that you are one. You are one. This is not her taking it. This is not you taking it. And I love that it took and took and took away from Demi the longer that she was kind of left in there. But if I could have picked an ending to the movie, it would have been right at the end when they finally take the substance again and they morph into that horrific monster of like a bunch of different parts put together, and they're both stuck and trapped in there, and they kind of sit up and they look in the mirror and then just fall over. And the reason why I thought that was like a good place to end it is because like that would have been a really good like wrap up ending, but then they kind of went into that extreme like comedy-esque horror of like, okay, now we're in this dress and she's going in and she's just got there, and then when they get to when they get to the actual event and all of the bloodbath, I was like, I understand maybe you're doing like a this is on all of us, because she was just spraying blood everywhere, all over the audience. And it was like people were either calling her a monster, just stopped in terror. People were running. There was all these different reactions to it. And it felt very Carrie-esque, because all I could think about was the pig's blood in Carrie and her getting pointed out as a freak and about all of this, and her kind of revenge in the movie. Carrie was burning the school down, and here it was just kind of like all of this blood, and then she kind of like slugs her way over to her little star. And I'm like, I feel like you put together such a great movie with all of these little things and all these subtle aspects and just seeing the decline and the rise and the overpowering, and it's turned us into all into these monsters. But then you just went over it and you were like, okay, let's just, be silly and ridiculous and end it on a note where she's sitting on her star. And
I
granted,
love that.
the
I
graphics were
love the
amazing.
star.
I
Yeah.
did. I love the star. I love the opening with the star, how we got kind of
Yes.
an overview of her career without actually seeing it based off of the star going in, the reactions to time passing. So I love the way that they ended it with her back on the star. And then
And I
eventually
would have loved that somehow, right? Like I would have loved that being a nice little wrap up of the start, even if she was just that gross monster that like drug herself over to the start to remind herself of where it all started. But when it got to that Carrie bloodbath, I was like, you've lost me. Like I feel like I get you're trying to make a point. I get you're trying to be creative, but this isn't body horror anymore. It's like 80s sci-fi or like 80s horror trope. But again, I am not a critic, nor am I in the film industry, but that was
well,
just
she's
my opinion.
the monster that they created. So she's literally putting it into their faces, sort of at the end of the movie, which I appreciated. But yes,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It was still great though.
It was great. Like it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I just yeah, that last part I just felt like a lot of movies these days are trying to push that 2 hour mark, and I'm like, you had a perfect. I do like what you said about her like kind of throwing it back in their faces, but I'm like, you had this perfect thing, and then you just were like, we need 40 more minutes. Like, let's go.
I felt like I was watching Evil Dead the musical.
Yes, thank you. And
Yeah,
that's what I
I
mean.
did.
A
Like
horror
I felt like there should be
comedy.
a splatter zone.
It
Yes,
shifted.
it's
It shifted.
interactive in 4D.
In
It should have
four. Oh no.
Oh, imagine you had 3D glasses during that. Oh.
happened. Oh, yeah. Missed opportunity 4DX in this film for sure.
They did so good. They put so much detail into everything. And I
Yeah.
think they did in the end too, but I was just like, you know, even that hallway they had, like where she kind of got to start over, because Sparkle Your Life had all of the rows of how many years
Yeah.
it had been on, and she had the two. And I was like, so good. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was really well used of production design and space
good.
for sure.
I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. Like, I mean,
Yeah, I'm shocked. Because did you not have to take your dog for a walk halfway through watching it like you did with
this was not
Halloween?
The Conjuring. Okay.
Oh yeah, it was The Conjuring.
The Conjuring freaked
Oh,
me out.
Conjuring's got some good jump scares.
It
Honestly,
does.
it's a good entry horror film. Anybody that's trying to get into horror, I always recommend The Conjuring because it's
So
a good.
good, but he did not watch it. He abandoned us halfway
So
through it and took his dog out for an hour and came back and was like, "Yeah, I watched the whole thing." And he wasn't scared at all.
that is not true. I did take the dog out. She had to pee, but that was
Mhm.
not my. I was not gone from an hour of the movie. Um, but yeah, I'm okay. Well, here's a question. Like, because I'm not a horror person, and this movie is insanely graphic in every possible way. Is it a horror?
Yeah, I think it's a horror film for sure. Because I think that any good horror, if you look at horror as we go through like the decades of horror films, it's always a reflection of what society's kind of anxieties are, right? And so for women, this is for sure a horror film when you're looking at sort of the lengths that someone is going to go to like, she was saying, um sort of chase like youth and kind of, what Elisabeth does to herself in this movie is far more violent than anything anyone else does to her. So what she's going through with like the substance when it comes to that, like, yes, Dennis Quaid's character Harvey is awful, mean, totally a huge misogynist. She's surrounded by a misogynist. We have the really gross shrimp scene, which we already covered. But like what she goes through taking the substance, and even sort of ignoring multiple red flags when she's going to get it, from crawling under the door to like going through the dingy alleyway to when she even gets to the room. I think I caught this the first time, and maybe you can expand on it a little bit better. But when she gets to the room, from what I saw, there was only two numbers there. There was just
Yeah.
hers and the other guys. So
Mhm.
that leads you to believe that not a lot of people are out there taking the substance and that this whole thing is incredibly sketchy and they're kind of testing it out on you. And who's testing it and why?
Yeah.
And she ignores all of these things because, at the end of the day, it's about sort of her own self-image and how she sees herself. And, the things that she does to herself and does to Sue, because ultimately, even though this is another better version of herself, she just feels so much self-loathing around it, right? That she wants to, just be in her apartment and gorging on food to destroy Sue's life and making it awful for her. So yeah, I just found that really horrifying. Or when you're looking at just even her aging in the film, it's very
Mhm.
grotesque and it's almost like a funhouse like mirror kind of like projection of what an older kind of version of yourself would kind of like look like. And I think everybody's kind of scared of aging and sort of what's going to happen when we get older and what's going to happen to our bodies and is it going to be awful and so I think that it touches on a lot of those things. So that's what I would say. It's definitely a horror film for sure.
I wanna pause the horror conversation once for one thing you said, Laura. I
Mhm.
feel the need to defend the substance. I
As a
because
male, it's not shocking that you would. Do
no, hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out.
you want to eat some shrimp while you talk about
Wow, I'm telling you, that's great. No, we don't learn anything about them, but they didn't screw this up.
Yes, that's true. Elisabeth screwed it up. It was her kind of, the other
Just
guy,
saying, they
he was
delivered on their
kind of
promise.
They
he was
did?
just kind of wistfully, wasting away while the other guy stole his youth, but he was still, I'm fine with this. But yeah, I mean, yes, it isn't the creators of the substance's fault that she misused the substance.
I
Just
actually
shares it.
expected that to be the problem. I expected it to be like the substance's fault. But
Well,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the customer service reps were very reasonable with her
they
every
were on
time
the
she
phone with her
called.
a lot. They answered every time she called to like walk her through like everything. But, it's kind of just like that internalized like type of thing, right? From sort of like the female sort of perspective. And that's why they can't resist almost like consuming and destroying each other.
Yeah,
it's
for the
the
record, I'm not
thing.
defending what the substance represents. I'm just saying their corporate model
Hey,
seemed to work.
Yeah, it seemed to, if you
All
had
right.
just continuously done, and they did provide an out. So,
They did.
Yes, there was
They
an
did their
out.
job.
They did.
yeah, I like that it's labeled as sci-fi horror, like,
Mhm.
because exactly what Laura said about all of that horror stuff, it was scary, right? And you're kind of like in this, but it's also really sci-fi in the sense that like it's this new thing you're trying, and they made it pretty medical the way they were using it. Like even her bathroom is like her her entire house is decked out with her and different colors and textures, but the bathroom is just white and black tile.
Yep.
Mm.
Very much, very clinical, very, very much kind of maybe what she wants to be. It's like perfectly white porcelain, like making sure there's not any kind of something that makes you stand out, something that makes you seem different. You can have that in your life, but when you're looking in the mirror, first of all, Demi Moore naked looking in the mirror does not make me feel bad for her that she looks ugly.
Yeah.
I'm like, could you pick someone that has a body that really does need to be changed?
But to
But
be fair, and I
no, and
maybe I
it was
shouldn't be the one
better.
to
The
be.
younger
No, I'm
version.
just saying it was interesting. See, I feel bad being the guy making this comment because I feel like this is going to come out horribly wrong.
Oh
I
no.
obviously I'm watching Demi and I'm thinking she's absolutely stunning.
Mhm.
I had the same thought you did, Kat. I'm like, if you're going for normal,
Hmm.
Demi is not that, but at the same time, she is supposed to be this Hollywood
Yeah,
star, so
absolutely. She's
sure.
aging out and
But then when they compare, because this is what I mean, where the film's very graphic,
yeah.
but I was really wondering about that, like it because it's not. it doesn't feel exploitative to me, except that it is at the same time. But it's like she's saying, "This is me," and then Margaret's standing right behind her, or comes up and looks at her, and you go, "Oh, oh, she's younger."
Hmm.
And
Not to be
yeah, and
crass, but things are
Hmm.
younger. Let's put it that way.
it's true. Like someone like Demi Moore playing that part, it really does speak to the fact it doesn't matter what you look like.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Everyone wants
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, everybody.
Everyone wants to look firmer, tighter, like back like when they were young. Totally, it makes sense. I felt like the most heartbreaking part of the film was when she finally decided to go for drinks with her
yeah,
high school and her having that. I felt really like it really portrayed well what I'll say some women because I'm not putting us all in the same thing, but like really feeling like you look good and you feeling excited about something and you're dressed in your best, and then all of a sudden it's like you'll notice one thing and then you'll notice another. And then when she was just like had her hand on the doorknob and then decided to stay home, it hit me in a way that was like,
She sees that kind of like distorted image of her face in the dress.
yeah.
Right? So it's kind of that issue of like body dysmorphia and kind of like the way you kind of perceive yourself that others like,
Mm-mm.
you know. And I agree, it was 100%. It was so sad. She was so close to
And it
leaving.
was so accurate too, right? And you're just
Yeah.
excited, and then that body dysmorphia just kicks in to the point where it's like you're friggin', I mean, you're Elizabeth Sparkle, but you're friggin' Demi Moore, like you're gorgeous, you look amazing. And
Yeah.
then she looks down at the like younger version of herself, and it's just all that confidence is. I had so much hope for her when she was going out on that little like drink, and
Yeah.
then I think they really nailed that. Like as someone who deals with body dysmorphia and eating disorder and stuff like that, and having that almost like huge swing, right? Where she's like feeling good, she's looking good, she is happy, and then it just all goes to hell in your brain. I felt like that was very accurate.
Yeah. That's why I also think it was a good decision to not have them really like look alike.
Mhm.
Even though, like, obviously it would have been horrible to go through like a CGI de-aging process for someone with like Demi Moore. But it means that the characters are really like connected, kind of like in the same way that I think that they would have been had she been similarly looking, meaning
Mhm.
that like Demi, I think I said this earlier, but like Demi Moore is like not happy for like Sue's success. It's not like she's living vicariously through her.
Yeah.
She just doesn't have that kind of connection to Sue. And
Mhm.
so she's not like, yay, this is great. My younger self is like crushing it and booking all the
Yeah.
things. Instead, it's like, I hate her and I want to destroy her and I hate myself and I'm getting, more and more effects from the substance. This is totally derailing.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
That's yeah, exactly. Like that hatred and that
Mhm.
and also like with Sue, like she can't get enough either, right? Like it's like you're young, you're beautiful, you're on top, but she's not able to give that up to the point where like the part where she's just basically sticking that needle into goo. And it's like you see the open sore and you see her gag, like putting that in, but she's so desperate to retain
Yeah.
even her youth and beauty as she looks stunning and gorgeous. She's willing to go through that muck as well. Like both of them are. And I like that's how they are connected in that stressor, but
You are one. That was probably the hardest part for me to watch was the needle scene because I had a really big problem with Requiem for a Dream, which has a very famous, awful, awful scene with Jared Leto, like sticking needles into a very infected arm. It's incredibly difficult to watch. And that's all I
I'm
could think of when I was watching
so
the movie.
glad you got that too, because I was literally watching like through
Yeah.
eyes, and I remember feeling like not like I was gonna throw up, but like a little queasy. And I was like, all I could think about is this movie is Requiem for a Dream. Like it just keeps going back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awful, Steve. If you haven't seen it,
I
it's
haven't
awful.
seen Requiem for a
It's
Dream, but
awful. I
that would
watched it
not
once and I'll
surprise
never
anybody.
watch it again.
Yeah, it's a one-time watch.
Yeah.
It's a one-time watch.
But
I
if
mean,
you like this, maybe you'll love Requiem.
if you liked the scene
Maybe
of
I
the
will. It's a whole new Steve, right?
so
No.
but yeah, but basically, like Jared Leto's character is a heroin addict, and he cannot stop like shooting intravenous drugs into his arm, even when it's so infected and it's just like,
Decay.
oh my God. And he just keeps going. Yeah, that's what this is like. It's like you've seen it.
It's interesting with this one, because and you sort of started talking about it already between the two of you. I'm fascinated with the relationship between the older and the younger
Mm.
versions of themselves because, and not, I mean, Demi's one of two, but obviously the focus is on her. Um, and I'm fascinated with this relationship of how they're supposed to work together, but they can't or they won't. Like I wondered what the two of you thought about that directly because I mean I have my own thoughts, but I really wanted a feminine perspective on this tension here because I don't know what to make of it.
Well,
Like
the
you,
thing, one question that I have is like them sharing a consciousness or
Mm.
not, or whether
Mhm.
they're having kind of like they're obviously having two very separate like experiences, but there's the scene where Demi Moore runs into the biker guy.
Mm.
He basically treats her obviously very differently than he treats Sue. But there's like a scene, I think, if I remember correctly, it kind of like lingers for a while, whether she might remember him in some way or not. Because like the benefit of the substance to me would only kind of be appealing if you had that opportunity to have kind of some of those experiences as part of your younger self. Otherwise, like, why would you
What's
want
the
to do
point?
this?
yeah.
But I also feel like they are so disconnected. But that's never really, it was never really fully answered for me whether they actually share like a consciousness of some kind or not.
Well, we
But
keep going back to the fact that you are one. You are making these decisions because it's like Elizabeth saying she's not doing it right. She's taking too much. And it's like, well, no, it's you.
yeah,
And I thought the same thing about the biker too. I'm like, are they do they recognize it? Like,
yeah,
do
yeah,
they
yeah.
see any kind of recognition here? Because she does linger and kind of stare at him, and that may have been trying to steer us into thinking that they do.
Mhm.
But it's like when they wake up in the morning, or not
There's
in the
both-
morning,
There,
after
there
7.
is a point where they wake up at the same time. So,
Yeah, but
okay.
when
So,
they're, which is weird, but just even like when she gets up and she sees what Demi has done, or like Elizabeth has done, and she sees what suits them, it's like they have no
yeah,
recollection.
he has
There
no like
is no memory of that except for, a chicken bone coming out of your belly button. But like it just showed, for me, it's like it showed the two personalities. This is not to sound stupid, but it showed the two parts of this Elizabeth woman and the one shared desperation
Mhm.
that they both have. Like Elizabeth is desperate to be young and like in the know, but she's also desperate for recognition. Like when Sue's like, "Oh, I never really watched her," and she's just like hideous and like screaming and yelling about like, "I made you," and all of that stuff. So it was hard for me to tell if it was like, do they know? Are they now mortal enemies? I feel like it's like fighting yourself a lot of times,
Yeah.
right? Like there's seasons where you're just like, I'm not good at this. I'm just sitting at home eating, watching TV, watching infomercials all night. And then there's seasons where you have that kind of boost of ego and feeling good. But it was just such a massive, I don't know, speak on that. Like she was getting what she wanted, but
Yeah.
she really wasn't at all.
I wondered. Sorry, Laura, were you going to say something?
No, I totally agree with what she said. Yeah, I think it's just yeah, it's very interesting seeing the differences between the two of them and how they kind of react and sort of each want more, but in a different way. And I think that yeah, like Sue like takes some shots at her with Jurassic Fitness and so on. And yeah, I can see why she'd be mad about that. But also, like society does pit women against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of that like attainable kind of like not attainable beauty standard.
Yeah.
um It does, right? And so you're kind of seeing that in action between like the interplay between like the two of them. And as the consequences become more severe for Elisabeth, where like she's, aging rapidly in
Horrifically.
very grotesque ways, which are not subtle. Like they couldn't have just started out with like a couple of gray hairs and had to be like, really, big physical disfigurements almost.
That knee part killed me because I was like, ooh, I have a bad knee. That better not be
What I
turns
loved about that is there was that scene, but then she moves so
yeah.
quick to go get the substance up again.
Yeah. We laughed in the theater too at that. We were like, wait a
Wasn't she having trouble moving like 15 minutes ago? But man, she just bolted out of that apartment so fast to get the termination stuff. But yeah.
See, I see you tapped into something that I wondered, and I wondered about the consciousness thing, but I didn't get the sense that they were. I mean, they kept saying you are one, but I didn't get the sense that they ever really were.
hmm
And I mean, my disgust at my own gender is long documented. Uh, at this point, um, that I am in that genders. Um,
Yeah,
but
but you're aware.
Yeah.
yeah, but I wish I was long before. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, I wondered if this was a generational conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because we had two women who were the same, but not the same, but they were both fighting the same battle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yet and they couldn't get it together. Like they would say, what
Mhm.
didn't they kept saying, like, respect the process. You got to respect the process. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just thought that was
Like,
really
well,
interesting.
like they could have each like, been pretty fine, sort of in their own kind of separate, bodies, lives, versions of this substance, had they adhered to the rules.
hmm
But, always you want more. Sue's taking off her success. Elisabeth probably would have done the same, right?
Ye-
So, like, absolutely would have taken more time and but it was to her own peril. And again, I think that's the saddest, probably most tragic part of the film is that, she did this to herself, right? And it was through her own kind of decision-making process and sort of how she feels about herself. And that was sort of like the consequences of it. And her just trying to destroy Sue as much as she possibly could, but it was having such a huge impact on herself because they are one.
hmm
So,
And
yeah.
that's like what, in a way, like, and I don't think that Elisabeth was elderly, and I'm not putting her in the cohort of an elderly person because she was aging at a horrific rate. But it's trusting the process in the sense I feel like they should have just at the beginning when it first started, they were gentle with each other. They like, she puts her in a comfortable position on the floor, and then Sue's making like a closet to throw her in. And in a way, call me crazy, but like societally, isn't that what we do to older people?
Mhm.
Isn't it that we're taught to like respect and listen and learn from older people, and to kind of take that in and respect the path that they've already walked. But then when it gets too much in your way, or they become too much of a burden, you're just kind of throwing that respect out the window.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's literally what you're doing. And I agree with you. I think Elisabeth would have done the exact same thing that Sue did. And that kind of ties into them because 100% I could see Elisabeth in her prime sitting on that talk show and saying, yeah, Jurassic, like the Jurassic workout about someone like Susan Sarandon,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like, or the person who would do all of the other like, 80s fitness bop stuff. But it just, there was no respecting the process, and there was no respecting each other in the end. It was just about getting what each other woman wanted, but they wanted the same thing. Like you could have had it. It was perfect, but it became too addicting. It became too much.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I wondered, if they could just get it together. Like, would they have been able to tear down the system that
Like
they
leave a
were?
note for each other.
Yes. they also could have done that. But I also think it's like, you could take it deeper than that, that it's all about, Elizabeth's own like self-loathing, right?
Yeah.
That she just can't get out of. And that's why, that's sort of why that kind of like happens and why it becomes such a horrifying like spectacle, right? But yes, they
And
could have left
yeah,
each other.
why she can't get rid of her. She's
Mhm.
literally 3/4 of the way from releasing herself from this,
Yeah,
and she cannot
can't
do
do it.
it.
Yeah, yeah. She was so close.
She was
So
so close. And for some reason that like the black substance or like the ending drug was gave Sue superhuman strength, even though it was supposed to kill her.
Did Sue have superhuman strength?
She threw her across the room to the point where I thought I was in an Avengers movie. Like I was like, what's happening here? That's when it all went.
wild.
That
Yeah.
was the moment. That
It
was
was
jumped the shark
wild.
right in that space.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. I feel like yes, I guess so. I don't know. And she didn't
Like,
really finish the process. So
One
who
heck of
knows
a substance.
say?
yeah.
Who could say what would have happened?
And that's when also Elisabeth got that super speed when they were fighting.
Yeah, when she like dragged her, that was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
went from the kneecap to that, and I was like,
Yeah. Well, you also see like a lot of like Elizabeth as a character, like her vanity kind of on display as well at certain points in the
hmm.
film. She always doesn't want to be noticed, but she's always wearing that bright yellow coat, right?
Yes.
So it's like that, like totally like stands out. People are gonna notice you, even when she's trying to like be sneaky, sneaky to go get,
Yeah.
the last. What coat you wearing? That bright yellow coat. Everybody's gonna see you. They know it's you. But yes, yeah. I also feel like we haven't talked about the guy that lives across the hall. I just remembered that.
Oh,
He
Where
is
he
every
yeah, I
man.
forgot about him.
Ooh, and then she opens the door and he's like, "Oh my God, who are you? What
I,
happened to
I feel like if I talk about him, people are going to be like, she's such a Karen. And just because she's old and doesn't have people like knocking on her door, but he is every man in
yeah,
society right now. Like
totally
he
encapsulates
is,
everything in terms of how women are viewed and
yeah.
valued and all of those types.
Boundaries are
Yeah.
pushed.
Yeah. But yes.
In some ways, there's levels of the men in here because obviously, shrimp chugging, what's his name?
Well,
Dennis Quaid,
yeah.
which by the way, apparently he did that scene for like, I think he did it for like 45 minutes of him he's just trying to eat it
Then
as
you know what?
disgusting as
Demi Moore
possible.
deserves every Academy
Award
Award
possible. Yeah.
because I could not even. I was literally watching that scene like this, but not the scene where she was ripped out of a back.
Yeah.
Like I was like, ugh, I couldn't even.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like he's the most obviously disgusting,
Yeah. Well,
but he's also the most powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But then you've got this guy who lives across the hall who's, not that gross, but obviously still gross. Like
And
he's
to make a statement even more dangerous in some ways because he's just the weird neighbor. Like he's like, I can hear you behind the door. Like people have had that happen to them. And like you're like a girl who's like living alone in an apartment building and you have to check your people before leaving.
Yeah. 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 Neighbor guy. What a turn.
doesn't even get a name. He's just neighbor guy.
He's just neighbor guy to me. Because I do not remember if his character even got a name.
His
But
name
yeah.
is Everyman.
Yes, obviously all the men in the movie are total caricatures of men and utterly disgusting and misogynistic, but
Yeah,
it suits the film.
it does.
I also heard that Ray
You know
Liotta
that.
was supposed to be in Dennis Quaid's role, but unfortunately he passed away before the film
Oh.
started.
Sorry, who was?
Ray Liotta.
Was supposed to be Dennis Quaid's role?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's
Really?
still in the credits of the film as like a special like thank you. But yeah, I wonder how
Mm.
that would have turned out. But still unhinged and great, I'm sure. But Dennis Quaid definitely suits it.
I think he would have been cooler, and I don't mean cool as in more suave. I mean like he just like his demeanor would have been cooler and more menacing.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Dennis Quaid is obviously toxic, but almost comedic in the way
Yeah.
that he plays it, maybe. I don't know.
He's
Yeah, I
almost
got
like
a kind of like a yeah, Better Call Saul vibe, but like not in like the character, but like just in that like
Yeah.
that look. But he like he's not I feel like maybe this is me, my age showing, is that you said he was like he would look more menacing, but I feel like that character isn't a menacing one. Like he just has literally he has nothing against her. He's like, great, see you later. You're always welcome here. There's no evil there. He's just a disgusting man who like it's like, yeah, no, it's not your fault. Like after 50, it all goes downhill. Like he's the systemic, gross people that we see in the news all the time these days.
I also thought it was interesting the way that they shot both of them. So like when you see like Sue like on the show, in contrast to some shots of Demi Moore, which are a little bit more flat, like Margaret Qualley's character, like she looks like she's in like a Coca-Cola ad. Like it's so
Hmm.
bright and just like everything is just on display. And just yeah, I thought that was an interesting way to highlight both of them.
She was apparently really uncomfortable in the aerobic scenes. Like she said that she was in tears a lot of times they
Really?
were shooting, yeah, because she said she wasn't used to that sort of hypersexuality, like expressing
Hmm.
herself that way, which is interesting because I think she's so good in the film, but she said she it was really difficult for her to those were the scenes that were really hard for her.
That's so interesting because yeah, watching them almost felt like weird to me. Like I'm like, this is so hypersexualized. I'm like, is this even like, are we even like exercising anymore? But I found like the way they set up production with that, they set up production like within the movie was interesting too because it's literally like what you see on TV now. It's like there's like literally one camera dedicated just to her butt.
Yeah.
And that's like music videos now. That's all of that stuff. It's like, yeah, there's 10 cameras on you and they all are fixated on a part of your body that they can use to sell.
Yeah, that's what I also love because like I feel like in this movie we're kind of advanced when it comes to like scientific like discoveries and that the substance exists and you can just do it at home.
Yeah.
Like a totally normal like procedure, but at the same time that is like the most popular show that's on television at the
Yeah.
moment is
That's
probably
who's hosting New Year's Eve.
who's hosting New Year's Eve. Like I just
Poor Dick Clark. Or I feel like just
Oh,
like
that
did I not tell you? This is the younger me. You don't want that. Why
but
our
you know
show's
what?
every other week now. It's like,
It's so funny because it's so true though. Like you go in it like to me that like whole part about like the substance being able to do at home doing it at home
Mhm.
not even a question to me because like if you remember back in the day and when I like 10, 12 years ago even when stuff was a little bit just coming out there were Botox parties all the time. People would have like they would have their girlfriends over instead of Tupperware you'd have a nurse come and give you Botox and
Mhm.
because these nurses weren't registered and licenses weren't there, there were literally reports of people having cement from Home Depot injected into their backsides, injected into their faces because it was cheaper than actual Botox and it got there faster. And women were dying, women were being poisoned, but they're just literally like guys come over have some and you see it now on like the housewife show and everything they have actual doctors come in but back then it was like hey Steve I'm having 5 people come over don't say anything but a guy I know someone who has a Botox hookup and it was cement it was like silicone filler it was all of these things and people were physically dying and it was being reported but it didn't slow people down
Yeah.
at all.
well, with that in mind, and I'm just thinking of this looking at my notes from the film. What do you think about the phrase "the better version of yourself"? Because that's what they keep floating here. This was the substance offers.
Mhm.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? What do you think of that?
I think it depends on like obviously the person taking the substance and sort of what their goals are. And it seems like both people that did take it that we're aware of in the film, their goal was to continue being youthful because
Hmm.
that's what they valued the most. And in terms of the impact it had on their lives, they loved the attention. They felt that they were valued by society kind of as a result of that. So I think that would kind of just depend on why you were taking the substance. But that's also, what society would kind of say would be the better version of yourself too, because that's what, most people want is being young, staying young, not getting older. They're worried about what would happen. How will society view me? Will that impact my career? Will that impact the way people treat me?
Mhm.
Based off of all of those things. So I think it's like a combination of those things, but it's an interesting question to pose. And if you want that,
Yeah, is it even you? Because
yeah.
you're not like she wasn't sitting there waking up in the morning in like, like beautiful silken sheets. She was in the back room, like in the
She's
freezer, kind of chilling
literally
out.
the back room that was built for her to hide her away, right?
Right. And like just like you were kind of I don't see how all I saw was just negativity in the sense of like Elizabeth's not getting anything out of this. She's waking up, she's having to clean up for the 17-year-old who's partied all night and like slept with people. But
Mhm.
I think in society, what's the like as someone who's very much into social media and all of that kind of stuff and who follows like trends and stuff because I think it's like funny and I'm like, haha, yeah, don't you know this? And I'm like, all you want in life is to be relevant.
Yeah.
You need to be relevant. You need to be worth talking to. You need to be up on everything. Like I do have a job that allows me to kind of um stay in the know with like things that are going on social media and trends and stuff like that because I work with young people. I
Mhm.
work with teenagers. I have to keep up on with this stuff because if I don't, I can't make those connections with them. Like my kids in my classrooms were teaching me these TikTok dances, and I'm like, did I feel like a total doofus being 40 years old and not knowing how to do a TikTok dance? Yes. Did it actually affect me to the point where I was like, oh shoot, like should I be practicing these at home to like hang out with these kids? Yes. And
Yeah.
it really like even a student, and I'll never forget it. I was like, "Oh, do you talk to your friends on Facebook?" And they looked at me and they said, "Kat, no one under 40 uses Facebook. Don't embarrass yourself." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm 40 and I'm on Facebook." And like it's true. But if I think about it personally, as someone who's struggled with like image and like stuff like that, would I still be doing this if I didn't work with kids? Probably, because I want to be relevant.
Mhm.
I want to be I want to be in the know. I want to have that. And I feel like that's what people put a price on nowadays.
Yeah.
I like that you said the word price because
Mhm.
thinking about this too, you both sort of have this is great, but I think when they're talking about better version of yourself, they're talking about more marketable.
Mhm.
You're talking about a commodity, something that you can sell as opposed to character, because the character that I think that's why they struggle to get things together. But it's
Yeah.
just like the better version of yourself is whatever is going to, yeah, relevant is the word,
Mhm.
follow us on TikTok. Um,
Click here to subscribe for
yeah,
Elizabeth TikTok,
smash that subscribe button.
Instagram, but not Facebook because we're not that old.
Uh, it's funny. I remember when Facebook came out, or at least my grandfather used to tell me days when Facebook first came out. Um, and we had never experienced anything like that before. Like
Mhm.
I remember the days of MSN when you'd be doing chat and it'd
ICQ.
be just like you'd just change your name and that's how you knew what was going on because I worked with youth at that time and I called that my morning newspaper. I'd log into MSN and they would all say how their every detail about their lives and their status. No photos, no nothing. And but with social media when that really hit with Facebook and all the iterations since then, that's really changed the way I mean, it's not like we didn't have body image, and I'm
No,
talking
we
about
did.
culturally, not just because obviously I'm just talking about myself here. It's not like we didn't have body image issues before, but now we're constantly holding ourselves up against other people in every way.
Yeah, in every way, because it's more of like a visual thing, and there's a lot more pressures. It's a lot more immediate, and things that are happening. You're also having people that are promoting things just
Mhm.
to better and enrich themselves that are not necessarily healthy for everyone else. But yeah, I can't imagine being a teenager today with like social media. Like, what a nightmare. Like, just
Yeah, we all had our like bullies and our like our what our films and our magazine cutouts and Jessica Simpson being called fat or like like all of this back in the day. We all had these issues. But like you're saying, Facebook just came out, not just came out, but Facebook came out in 2004.
Mhm.
It was marketed and came out. So it's within the 2000s. If you think of the past 20 years, the amount of bombardment 24/7 and all the different apps that we have and throughout the world they have, like these kids are on Snapchat, these kids are on Instagram, they're on X, I guess. Like the constant deluge of information and trends and what's cool and what's not. It's like I've literally seen kids say, "Oh, did you hear about this?" And they're like, "Ugh, what are you on Instagram Reels? That was on TikTok a month ago." And
Yeah.
like they're belittling each other because they're like, "You're a week behind in the information, like vomiting into who you are as a person." And there are people out there who are getting surgeries
Mhm.
like to look like the Snapchat filters, like to make their facial features look
That's
like the
crazy.
filters on Snapchat. And these kids are just they're constantly tweaking their own image to the point where it's like you don't even look like you anymore. And yes, we were doing that at one point, but we didn't have the tools that they have right now. And it is like someone's literally spraying blood across like an
Yeah.
audience in the sense that like this is how saturated, but like how saturated people are, and being relevant 20 years ago and being relevant now changes within minutes. These
Mhm.
kids can't keep up, and adults are even younger adults because okay, fine. When I was like 14, 40-year-olds were geriatrics. So I now am in the geriatric stage
Yeah.
of that. But I feel like there's even less respect for people who are even just in their 40s. Like you don't get it. You don't get it. And we don't. At least I don't. I pretend to. As I'm like looking on Urban Dictionary for something my students said.
Oh my gosh, I used to do that all the time.
And as a Jurassic person, it's like back
That's
when we were
right.
younger, the priority was home ownership, 401ks, retirement, all of this. But now we don't have that. It's literally, are you relevant? Are you worth me putting the coins into you that I will get something that's worthwhile and I can make a story to share about someone else with someone else to seem cool or beautiful or whatever.
You know what I love about Demi Moore in this film is that I feel, having watched her come up in as an actress, um, that so much I could be way off on this, but I feel like this feels like a very personal
Hmm.
for her. Because like I remember in the 90s, and she's always very been seen as hypersexualized. Like I mean, not I there's actually I can't say that is the case because there are sometimes that people talk strictly about her acting. I remember A Few Good Men. Was it St. Elmo's Fire? Am I wrong on that one? Oh, I'm gonna look like an idiot if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, like those late 80s, early 90s films. But then she got into the striptease era.
Hmm.
And actually the funny thing is um St. Elmo's Fire. That's what it was. Um this the funny thing is the same time striptease came out was Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, where she's playing an exotic dancer in an
Mhm.
animated film.
Hmm.
And
They
I'm
both
like,
came out in 1996. They came out the same year.
same year. I think they came out with the same week. I think they actually came out the same month. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
Well,
and she just, I mean, and even what was it? Charlie, was it Charlie's Angels? She was the villain in Charlie's Angels, and she was,
Hmm.
and what's the scene that everybody remembered at the time was her walking on the beach in a bikini. Oh, she's
Hmm.
back, and it's like, uh,
Well, in her memoir that came out, like she talked about kind of like her own perceptions of her body image around a few of those films. Like she was exercising a lot, like to fit into, ironically, the Navy suit for A Few Good Men, which like I would not have
That's
anticipated.
amazing. You wouldn't think that would be.
Right. And, getting addicted to like working out all the time. And then she continued on in G.I. Jane. And then, she had to, go on a really strict diet for striptease. And so she spoke about like her challenging relationship with food and sort of her own perceptions of her body and how, it took her a long time to kind of feel like okay and like her skin. So I think for sure this would definitely have a personal kind of like would really resonate with her personally for sure. And I'm so happy to see her in this role. And
Yeah, she obviously looks amazing. But even like everyone's like, "Oh, what's your favorite Demi Moore movie?" And everyone's like, "Indecent Proposal." You know what I mean? Like she was
oh
in that
yeah, I
one. That was
forgot
the
about it.
famous one that she was
come
in.
on, Steve, Ghost. You forget Ghost.
I didn't
Ghost,
forget
Indecent
Ghost. I forgot Indecent
Proposal.
Proposal.
But yeah, I honestly like I was like, Demi Moore, whatever. Like who I don't know. I haven't seen her in forever. But when I actually saw her in a like it almost was like a recognition in a different way. I'm like, I'm older and like she's doing this, she's older. I don't even know how much older she is than me. But just seeing that like in my age and seeing her in a movie like this, and it was just really I thought she did so well.
Yeah.
She is 62 in November.
That's disgusting. She's
Banana.
Suddenly,
Banana.
the whole
suddenly I
podcast,
hate
it
her.
all shifts now. It's like,
Get out of here.
Amazing.
Back into the
Oh,
bathroom closet.
oh man, yeah. She's amazing. She looks
She's so
amazing.
great.
And yeah, the only other question I have about this film is what was the nurse's stake in promoting the substance? Like, why does he want other people to take it? Like, is he getting a kickback? Why is he
Did he
like,
create it?
did he create it?
no. Oh, I never thought of
Like
that.
his
The
I
guy
first
that
thought,
full
passes
thought.
her like the number and is like, "Ooh, you'd be a good candidate." And he like squeezes her spine and
Oh,
he's
that
like,
I was so creeped out
"Yeah,
at that. I was like, ugh.
I got the impression that at first it was working for that guy.
But maybe it
Because
is working because the guy in the thing looks like
yeah."
they
Like
were
he
taking
keeps,
turns. There wasn't anything cruding up on him that
no,
she was.
no, that's what I mean. I think it was working out well. And
Yeah,
because
I
remember,
bet you he
time
made it.
passes,
Mhm.
and then
Maybe
the
it's
dude is
true.
like, it's the worst. The older guy's like, this is the
And the
worst.
other guy's like, "This sucks." They just start taking more and more life from you.
And it's hard to remember that you still are worthy. And that's what makes her
Yeah,
go on the date.
yeah.
Or try to go on the date. She's like, and that could have turned so much differently,
There's
but
like a couple of holes, and I'm like, "Huh? Why was he so invested in recruiting other people?"
yeah. Or because
Like,
she was
what
in
does
that
he
accent.
care? Like, yeah, it's working for him. So, like, what does he care if like other people do it or not?
But I do like the fact that you don't really know where this substance comes from, because
Yeah,
in reality, no one cares. Just like those women that I was talking about that got cement put into them from Home Depot, they did not once ask, where did this come from? Is it
yeah,
legit? They were just like, yep, come over, give it to me, and we'll figure it
yeah.
out.
Hook me up to the substance. These
Yeah.
instructions are pretty straightforward, simple, easy to
They
follow.
had good packaging and
That company did not let them down. I'm just
no.
saying again, that company came through. All right.
Maybe this wasn't even their first round trying it. Maybe they've had several like rounds and this is their like they're like, oh, we've clinched it. We figured it out.
Yeah, that could have been. There could have been some unsuccessful candidates.
Hmm.
I'm just saying, if you buy something that's battery powered and you eat the batteries, it's not the fault of the company. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that
There's
is
even warnings.
but it is true
Never miss a day.
it is true what Kat is saying. Like a lot of like cosmetic procedures or things that we're putting into our bodies now, we have no idea what the huge long-term effects are going to be. Like no one really knows because they're just so new on the market.
Yeah.
So it could be great or it could be horrifying. Who's to say?
There's I like online and like watching these beauty influencers and stuff have there are now children on TikTok that have their own accounts, which is a separate conversation because they're at least one of them said that they were 7 and they're sitting there and doing their 7-step face routine before school. And they're putting on these toners and they're putting on these gels and they're putting on all of this stuff. And yeah, you don't know. How is that going to affect you? How is that going to affect you hormonally? How is that going to affect you, like your skin, your ability to just even protect yourself from the sun after toning at that age? Like, yeah, nobody, it's a cool thing to do. You have to stay relevant.
And that to me is why this movie needs to be as heavy-handed as it is. I know there's been a lot of criticism about it not being subtle and it's continuously hitting you over the head with like the messaging. But it's like I think it needs to be. Like, yeah, we've made like some progress in like some certain areas, but I don't think enough. And definitely not enough if 7-year-olds are on TikTok doing their skincare routine.
Yes, it's, ugh. And you're right. Like, it shouldn't be subtle at
Yeah.
all because the people who they're like putting this out for are not getting subtle.
Yeah.
Subtle, like there's medical professionals that are saying, do not do this. It is going to kill you. And they're like, nah, I don't know. You seem sus. And they're like rubbing it on their face.
Yeah.
Like, how much less subtle can you get when there's people, doctors, like medical experts? It goes back to COVID, right? Like people saying, like, we are the top medical people in the world, and we're telling you this, and people are like, I'll go figure it out on TikTok.
Oh.
It's
Mhm.
nuts. Yeah. People need to be hit over the head with some stuff.
Well, and for this particular film, like I said, it being brash, bold, graphic, I don't say this very often, was felt entirely necessary. Every aspect of it. This movie needed to be excessive, and it had to gross you out.
Hmm.
Because if it did, if they had gone subtle and they had just quietly gotten their point across, I don't think it would have had the same impact. Like this is a film that demands a response. And I mean, when I saw it, there was nobody came out of there feeling mid. They either hated it or they thought it was the best thing they'd seen. Or they were ripping it to shreds. Like I mean,
Hmm.
the but it gets your attention. and
Mhm.
and it has to, like, they're talking about the sexualization of these two women, the same woman, the two women, but it's been told to them and it's been put in their heads. She's fired because she's just too old. Doesn't matter if you think she's attractive, she's fired. So it's in her head. So you got it, and you have to see it here as they're trying to figure it out. I think the comparison and how they view it, the bloody, bloody ending is so over the top. Like,
Yeah, it's very polarizing. I
Hmm.
personally, Kat, you had some mixed feelings coming out of the ending and whether you liked it or not. But when you think about it and sort of the way women are treated in society and how misogynism is in society, like it's not a subtle thing, you
yeah,
know? So I think it does have to be kind of like in your face and I think
Because
that
it's sure not subtle in our everyday lives.
yeah, exactly.
Like people aren't even trying anymore to slip things in or like do that. And like if I think about it now after we've had this conversation, that end part where she's literally nothing but a goo and a face, she's still trying to get back to her star.
Yeah.
that's
Still
why I love that ending. I love that, and she's
And then
just,
she relaxes on it, and then just
and
like
then she's
everybody else,
washed
she's washed
away.
away. Yeah.
way forgotten.
Yeah.
That's it. That's over. Oh God, the ending is so good. I loved it. I love the bookend of that kind of visual.
If you took out all the other like the other parts and you just like meh to meh, then I like the ending. I still won't give everybody that whole like 20-minute scene of her getting over to the
It was
I
uh,
got like I understand why, but I'm like, I get it, but like we don't need to hit 2 hours exactly to make a good movie.
yeah, it does like it does kind of lean into a very grotesque kind of depiction of the aging female body in the end, for sure. I can see why some female critics did have a problem with it, but I don't think it's glorifying it in any way. And again, it's mostly like whatever your worst fear of aging is,
hmm
it's being projected onto that situation.
Yeah, because they weren't doing it like, and I do agree because I'm like, yes, okay, it's an aging body, but like, really, is it? I mean, if the body had been radiated maybe billions of times and like it wasn't like this old frail woman who like then becomes like uglier and uglier. This is like they're again hitting you over the head with it. This is not a normal old person's body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. The only criticism I have is that there should have been more Pilaf. Pilaf is Demi Moore's dog and did not make an appearance in the film. And I am obsessed with Pilaf, and I wish Pilaf would have made an appearance, but it's fine. It's great. He was on the press tour. She was on the press tour, and it was delightful. But yes,
Kat, I
yeah.
should tell you this. When Laura and I first talked about doing this podcast, she immediately jumped to Pilaf, and that's who she was.
Okay, well now I have to look
Love
this
the
dog up.
star. Oh man, you have never seen Pilaf? Oh.
Oh.
If you go to her Instagram, you can see Pilaf. Pilaf was at TIFF as well.
Oh.
Um, she was at Cannes too.
Isn't she like 6 pounds or something?
Yeah,
She's
she
like,
weighs
Oh,
a pound.
she's one of these little, oh my gosh, that is not a dog.
The dog knows her angles. Incredible. That's my only criticism of this film. Otherwise, it was perfect.
Anyways, I'm gonna get
I'm
all
not.
in the pilaf floor.
We're all in on. Well, we're all in on Pilaf. We should screen it or skip.
Obviously, screen it, Steve, immediately. Run to your nearest theater. It'd be great to see it on the big screen, but it's fantastic. I loved The Substance.
I really want to say screen it because I thought this film was so smart, but I feel like you need to have an iron stomach to watch the film. And that's my one caveat. Like it
Yeah,
is
it is very
excessive
gory.
in every way. Like this is not your
Yeah.
average sort of like comedy horror type film. It's like, but
Two
it
people
is
did leave the
so
theater I was
good.
in.
Pardon?
The last 20 minutes, two people did leave the theater that I was in. It was an older couple and they left, but then he kind of hung back and tried to finish watching it.
You're not
Yeah,
gonna leave now, are
I
you? Come on.
agree. There is that caveat for sure that it is insanely gory and grotesque. Like if you can tolerate David Cronenberg, The Fly, you'll have no problem with this, but it is very gory.
It's the I mean it's been long documented how little I've seen like of body
Mm.
horror and all this stuff, but again, I came out of it and I thought it was so smart. Like I thought it was really good. The wonderful performances. I don't know. Kat, I haven't heard from you yet though. Kat, what would you say? Screen it
No,
or skip
I'm
it?
thinking about it because after having this conversation, it's really like helped me work through it. I could understand that some people might go to this movie and just leave and feel like I texted Steve, I was like, what the hell was that? Like
That's all she wrote.
when I came out, I was like, honestly, like that was too much. And it is very overwhelming. Like it can be visually overwhelming and like really gross. So if you're like me and you don't love body horror, like maybe screen it on a smaller screen so it's not as like in your face, but I would challenge you to watch it and I think you should screen it whether it's a rental or not and just think about, it's one of those things, take it away, talk to your friends, like go see it with friends and then talk about that afterwards, because really figure out what the parts are that are making you uncomfortable and try to understand why, because
Mhm.
it really is smart.
Yeah.
But I don't think you need it on a giant screen. If you need to watch that man eat shrimp, do it on a smaller screen.
Giant screen, giant screen.
And the zoom ins,
As big as
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
So gross.
and they
Uh,
had their eyes still. It was
Yeah, I honestly, I saw a lot of great films at TIFF this year. I've seen a lot of them up and down the board, and this one was the one I would had to talk about the most. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that because it's the best thing I saw. I think there were other films I would say were better films, but this was it was in my top 10. I thought this film was great, but I had to discuss it. And I'm so grateful that you two came on this podcast because this is one I needed, like you said, Kat, I needed to work it through.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with it, I think, with this film. Obviously there's a lot of shocking, grotesque
Mhm.
imagery on the screen that kind of catches you, but like when you're kind of like really thinking about the film and the themes of the film, you're like, all right, yeah.
And
There's a
yeah.
when you think about how grotesque it is and how all of that is, if you think about the lengths that she went to get the substance and like kind of push yourself past any of her, because you could see she's like, oh, okay, this is sketchy, this is sketchy, this is sketchy, and then she continues to do it. That's not even, to me, that's not at all a stretch of what women are doing, and some men and people of all genders, just like it's not, if you think who would do that, people are.
People would. People
Yeah,
would.
People
people
would,
would.
After watching The Substance, someone would be like, if it was offered to them, yes, yes, I would do that.
Hmm.
which is a good time to say that this podcast is brought to you by The Substance. Um, I can
What was
send
that weird
I'll
like?
send the phone number to your DM and then no,
A
no.
USB will be in your mail tomorrow.
USB in your mailbox with an
One,
Amazon package.
honestly,
What?
before, just one small thought too is that I really like that they had them as numbers. Like you're not a person.
Mhm.
Because even when she called the help desk and was like, hey, it's like Elizabeth Sparkle, no one would respond to her. And then if she would say like five, whatever her number was, then they would respond. Because you're just a number.
Yeah.
On that positive note.
On that
I like
positive note, neither of you are a number.
it.
So now that we've totally torn down social media, how can people follow you on social media or anything you want to promote? That was like the most awkward transition I've ever done.
Into social media, which we talked about how evil it is. It's true.
But not our social media.
Not
Everyone
ours.
else's social
Ours are
media.
fine.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to promote?
Laura, you got anything?
No.
No?
Just this film and my genuine love of it and why you should see it. And yeah, it's a ride for sure. Definitely one of the more unique films I've seen for sure this year. And I'm glad horror is coming back, guys. There'll be more.
There's so much more horror coming too.
There is so much more coming. It's great as a horror fan. I am so excited about it. So bring on the horror renaissance and body horror renaissance as well. Back, guys. Great.
Spooky season. You
Yeah.
can follow none of my socials because they're not private, but I'll be creeping yours.
We can follow Pilaf at
Yeah, Pilaf should get all the follows.
Everyone should follow Pilaf.
and you can follow us because I still feel the need to say that. You can follow us at Screenfish Online on Instagram and we are on TikTok as well, but that's a lot more sporadic. You could
Yeah, you need to
follow.
pick up on that.
That is true. You can follow us on YouTube as well. You can smash that subscribe button. Um, and of course, you can go to screenfish.net where we have not only fabulous conversations like this rather our YouTube channel, I should say, has fabulous conversations like this with amazing people. We also have interviews with lots of actors, directors on their upcoming projects. And if you are looking for interview or reviews as well, you can hit us up at screenfish.net as our site, as well for the latest in current projects that are out there. Which feels so wrong to promote at this point of the conversation, but I have to do it.
Well, you can guarantee that you're not going to be promoting any substance related topics or weight loss or any kind of new hyped up beauty regime. It's just movies.
I used it and I'm 19 years old. So I mean this is the effect of it.
That's true. Sold. I'll be crawling through an alley sewer game.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, thank you to you both, and for you at home. We started the conversation. This was Screenfish.